Now for reaction is our political panel, Maura Gillespie, founder and principal at Blue Stack Strategies, and Jim Kessler, third way executive vice president. So Maura, first to you. I thought this effort was dead. I think a lot of us did when it became clear that Democrats were going to back Mike Johnson up if they needed to. It felt like she was backing away. And then this today. Why?
I mean, it's really hard to say what goes through Marjorie Taylor Greene's head, but she clearly, again, does not understand what's at stake here. Her fellow Republicans and most of the conference there booing her on the House floor is evident of that, right? She does not understand the importance of having a unified front. What this does, not only does it create chaos for Congress, for the House, but also it deters donors to want to support the Republican Party, and especially to build their majority. This is counterproductive to that effort, and it's a very self-serving move on her part. Again, she is just on her own island here, and it's disappointing, and that's why you're seeing that reaction from her colleagues. It's not well thought through.
So is this a gift to Democrats, Jim, even though Democrats are going to have to be on the record voting to table a motion to oust a Republican speaker?
Yeah, I think it's a gift. I also think this is like we're now entering some interesting times. And we've already heard some Democrats like Dean Phillips of Minnesota say, I'm going to support the speaker, and Auchincloss of Massachusetts saying it. So, look, Mike Johnson is actually in a stronger place than he was a month ago. This is probably good for him, getting this deal through, standing up to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yeah, I think it's good for Democrats, but it's also good for him. Nancy Pelosi was for 20 years the leader of the Democrats because she would say to the progressives, I'm one of you, but you don't get this. Mm-hmm. Mike Johnson just did this with the hard conservatives in his caucus. If he's going to survive long term, he's going to have to get used to it.
Well, but my question is about survival long term. Even if he can stick it out with the gavel in hand through the remainder of this Congress, come January, if the House majority is still in the hands of the Republicans and he had to be saved by Democrats, why would the conference reelect him as Speaker?
Who else are they going to elect? I mean, Who else? I just don't know who the other alternative is. So, you know, Marjorie Taylor Greene put herself in a cul-de-sac. The reason why this is happening is she couldn't find a way out of the trap she set for herself. And, you know, that's why we're here now.
Okay, so maybe she was just in too deep, Maura, and in so deep that she potentially has to even act in defiance of a former president that she has a relationship with. Former President Donald Trump stood in defense of Mike Johnson, said nice things about him on multiple occasions, by all accounts didn't seem to want this to happen, and she's doing it anyway. What does that potentially signal about her political future?
It shows us that ego is more important than doing what's right for her constituents, for her colleagues, for the Republican majority, and for Donald Trump, quite frankly, because if he's out there trying to run for president, presumably you're trying to also expand your majority, because right now the House is the only section of the government that has Republican control, and they don't have that much leverage to use. Marjorie Taylor Greene does not understand how our government works. I don't think she has any care for or respect for her colleagues. And this just really does show that she is on her own island, as Jim said, in her own cul-de-sac of what is best for her. But this is also just ego. She was in too deep. She had made all these, again, she can't find a camera she doesn't love to get in front of. This is what she does. And unfortunately, her constituents will suffer. The House Republicans will suffer because, again, who's going to want to support a part of the government that's not really doing any work? This is going to set us up for another fight come, January. Should the Republicans maintain control of the House, it doesn't bode well for us.
Well, we should hear from the Congresswoman herself in the remarks she just gave on the floor when acting on this motion. Take a listen to Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Speaker Johnson supported fully funding abortion, the trans agenda, the climate agenda, foreign wars, and Biden's border crisis, rather than ensuring liberty, opportunity, and security for all Americans.
So, Maura, she keeps referring to different things that the speaker has done in a bipartisan way, referring to the uniparty. The uniparty and bipartisanship are synonymous here, I guess?
That's what is so frustrating, I think, when it comes to Marjorie Taylor Greene, because in order to get things done, when you only have one part of the government under your control, so you have a Democratic-led Senate, a Democrat in the White House, you only have so much leverage. You can try and use that leverage to get some things into a legislative package that are your legislative wins, but you're never going to get everything that you want. That's just not possible. It's not how the founders created our system of government to work. And unfortunately, she does not realize or understand that or care to understand that. So instead, it's so much easier to complain than it is to lead. And we have seen that with the Freedom Caucus largely. So you see that you have a Thomas Massey behind her and supporting her. That's about it, right? Because it's so much easier to complain than it is to lead. And she is a prime example of that. She'll, complain and lament about what the compromises are. Compromise is a good thing. It's what we should want our leaders to be doing to get things done for us. Even if it's a small step forward, it's a step forward. And she doesn't see that, unfortunately.
Quinnipiac poll that just came out today, Biden up 6 points. The margin of error is 2.6. Do you buy it?
I don't really trust polls entirely. I think, you really don't know what's going to happen. And especially in this election, you really don't know what's going to happen until we get to Election Day, because all it really comes down to is who turns out to vote, who shows up. And I think that this, to Jim's point, don't believe the polls, and the candidate shouldn't either. They should be going out and trying to win over that small percentage of undecideds, those people who are more moderate, but not all of the undecideds are moderate. Some of the undecideds are, kind of on the far right or far left that aren't happy with their presumptive nominees. So this is really going to come down to who can win them over. And I think those issues, of economy, safety, security, border, things of that nature are going to play the biggest roles here.
Okay, so Maura, if your point really is that it comes down to how people actually vote, not necessarily what they say in polls, I wonder what we should make of how Indiana Republican primary voters actually voted yesterday. 22% of them did not vote for Donald Trump. They voted for Nikki Haley, who ended her campaign 2 months ago. What does that say?
That people are dissatisfied with Donald Trump, especially Republican voters who wanted to make sure he knew that they didn't win him over. I think that's a really a telling point there, because, again, just because they are Republicans or maybe they're independents and they're not sure yet, they don't have to vote for Donald Trump. That also doesn't mean that they have to vote for Joe Biden. Those are not our two choices. The candidates themselves have to make the case to those voters as to why they should be selecting them. It's their responsibility, not the voters. And I think that vote, getting 20%, that's a sign of, we're not here for you, Donald Trump, and you need to tell us why we should be.